Hello, good morning. Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. So my name is Catherine Eldapar. I am going to present to you Unit 2, Supra-segmental phonemes. I'm going to talk about two topics. Number one is I'm going to talk about juncture and then followed by intonation. So let's start. Juncture are also known as pauses or a slight delay in a continuous flow of speech. Sound transitions characterize the movement from sound to sound within a word or phrase. In linguistics, this is a manner of moving or transition between two successive syllables in speech. So this is applying correct pauses. Juncture means applying correct pauses when you speak or when you pronounce. Now we have examples from English. In English, a syllable break at the plus juncture sometimes distinguishes otherwise homophonic phrases. So we have examples here: a name, a name. And then you call this, here's the correct juncture, a name. And then we have another phrase, an aim. And then we have the correct juncture here, and aim. And then that stuff, that stuff, that stuff. The second word or the second phrase, that's tough, that's tough. And then we have fork, handles, and four candles. Fork, handles, and four candles. Okay, so if you could notice, for the phrases a name, that stuff, fork, handles, we pause. For the phrase a name, we pause after the word a. So a name. And then for the phrase an aim, we pause after the word an. Okay, we move on to the next example. Now we have three kinds of juncture. The first one is called plus juncture, and you have the symbol, the plus sign. This is also known as open juncture and are situated in or among the phrase. So this is called, or this is a juncture between two consecutive sounds in speech having less mutual assimilation than a closed juncture and less hiatus than a terminal juncture. This is also a movement which is not continuous. There is a slight stoppage of the last sound till it blends with the next. Okay, so please remember that plus juncture is also called open juncture. And again, these are situated in or among the phrase. And it has two consecutive sounds in speech having less mutual assimilation than a closed juncture and less hiatus than a terminal juncture. So we have examples for plus juncture. Okay, so again, we have 6 examples here. We have a name, and then an aim. Number 2, we have night rate, and then nitrate. Shore, train, And then short, rain. New deal, nude, eel. For, met, form, eight. It swings, its wings. So again, if you could notice, the pauses are happening after the first word of of the phrase, just like what I mentioned earlier. So a name, you pause after the word a, and then for an aim, you pause after the word an. And then we have another example, new deal. You pause after the word new, and then for nude eel, you pause after the word nude. Next, we have subdivisions, two subdivisions of open juncture. Number one, we have internal open juncture, and then we have external open juncture. For internal open juncture, there is no break, so that words on either side of the juncture are run together. And for external open juncture, the word boundary that is preceded or followed by a pause, and this type of word boundary exhibits a break in form of a pause between words. So we have here more definition or more examples for external open juncture and internal open juncture. So we have four. The first phrase, we have a lighthouse. This is a house which is light, meaning a house that's with heavy materials. So again, that's number one, a lighthouse. And then we have for internal open juncture, the example is a lighthouse. A lighthouse. So this is a tower with a bright light for ships near the shore. The color of this one is usually red. And then we have number two, a greenhouse. This is a house which is green. And then a greenhouse, a glass building in which you grow plants. And then we have number three, a black bird. This is a special species of bird. And then a blackbird, any bird which is black. And then we have the word wet nurse. We have a nurse who is wet, and wet nurse to take care of people who are sick, old, and injured. So for the external open juncture, if you could notice, the pause happens after the word light. So you say a lighthouse. And then for internal open juncture, the pause happens after the word ah. There's no more pauses happening. Uh, no more pauses happening for the words lighthouse, greenhouse, blackbird, wet nurse. Okay, so again, the pause is happening after the word ah. And for external, the pause is happening after the second word, which is light, green, black. And for wet nurse, you pause, you make a slight pause after the word wet. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And then for the second type of juncture, we call this closed juncture. This is a movement from sound to sound which has no intervening pauses or delay. This is also known as normal transition. So we have here example. So if you could notice for open juncture, for open juncture, it's word to word. The pause is happening. I mean, there's a pause between, if you use phrases. If you use phrases, so the pauses is happening between words. Now, for close juncture, this is a movement from sound to sound. Again, sound to sound, or within a phoneme. It's a normal transition from one phoneme to the next within an adherence, whereas there's a slight stoppage of the sounds till they blend with the next. Okay, so if you can notice, we only have one words here because the pauses, or just a very, very slight delay, or very, very, it's not very obvious delay. So let's say, for example, the word train, and then you have night, you have blame, and then you have bright, merry, and bloom. So you cannot really immediately distinguish the pause because the pause is happening just within the phoneme or within the sound. It's a sound to sound pauses. Okay, so it's not really, again, it's not very obvious because it's just one word. Okay. Next, we have the third example. This is terminal juncture, or we also call this external. This is also known as falling clause terminal or terminal contour. This is a juncture at the end of a clause or adherence with falling pitch before a silence. So please take note that this is a juncture at the end of a clause. So we are now talking about clauses or adherence with falling pitch before a silence. And then this is a form of juncture consisting of a change in pitch before a pause, marking the end of an adherence or a break between adherences as between clauses. So we have an illustration here. So you have internal juncture, internal closed juncture phoneme, internal open juncture phoneme. Now for terminal or external junctures, we have four kinds or four types. Number one, we have falling juncture phoneme, and this is your symbol. Then we have rising juncture phoneme. This is your symbol for rising juncture phoneme. And then we have sustained juncture phoneme. That's your symbol. And then we have rise fall juncture phoneme. That's your symbol. And fall rise juncture phoneme. Next, we have three symbols of juncture. So number one, this is a single bar juncture, and this is your symbol. It indicates the need for a slight pause. So we have examples here. Sentence number one, we visited our students who are sick. So take note, if you get this sign or if you get this symbol, that indicates the need for a slight pause, just a very slight pause. So again, example number one, we visited our students. We pause after the word students who are sick. So just a very slight pause. You don't prolong it, just very slight pause. Number two, one of the students who are absent are sick. And then number three example, one who gets irritated easily is unhappy. So we have another. Okay, before we move on to other symbols of juncture, we have to take note that if the sentence, okay, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So you have to take note. I was trying to remove this so that I could read the very upper part, but it does not let me move it. But anyway, so you have to take note that if the sentence is composed only of one thought group, juncture is no longer needed. Again, take note, one thought group, juncture is no longer needed. So we have examples of one thought group here. My teacher teaches English well. My teacher teaches English well. I am interested in mathematics and my brother topped the board examination for engineers. So if the sentence is composed of one thought group, again, take note you don't need to use juncture. Next slide. So for this one, a change of places of juncture in the sentence logically change the meaning of the sentence. So again, if there's a change of places, if the juncture is changed in places, the meaning will change. So for example, we have the sentence is my teacher said the doctor is pregnant. So using the sentence or based on the sentence, when you ask the question, who is pregnant, the answer should be the doctor because the pause, because of the placement of the pause. Now we move on to the second sentence. It says, my teacher, you pause after the word teacher, said the doctor, you pause after the word doctor, is pregnant. So this time the meaning is changed because when you, again, the placement of the juncture is changed. So this time, if you ask who is pregnant, the answer now is the teacher. Okay. So next, we have the second type of symbols of juncture. We have double bar juncture. So this is your symbol, double bar juncture. This indicates the need for a longer pause between two thought groups in a sentence. So if you could notice, there are now two thought groups and this is longer. This will now need a longer pause. So we have three sentences here. For this one, this is under a positive. So Dr. Jose Rizal, our national hero, was born on June 19, 1861. And then you have Mr. Ronald Pascual, the singing professor, teaches English. And then we have the first gentleman, Miguel Arroyo, is also known as Jose Vidal. Okay. Next, we have pause before and after non-restrictive clause. Before and after non-restrictive clause. So when you say non-restrictive, non-restrictive clause meaning it's describing the noun. Okay, it's a clause describing the noun. Mrs. Rosario B. de la Cruz, who holds a doctoral degree, is my daughter. So the non-restrictive clause here is who holds a doctoral degree. Second sentence, Mr. Joseph Gallego, who is a member of the bar, is the incumbent president of MVGFC. And then Mr. Juan de la Cruz, who is still a freshman, is taking up medicine in UST. And then we have pause before and after parenthetical expressions. Okay, so parenthetical meaning these are expressions that are or that should be put in a parenthesis. So we have examples here together with 50 close friends, and then we have accompanied by their grand night, and then we have as well as Susan Roses. We also have who led the rallyist. Okay, so I don't need to read everything. You can just read them yourself. And then we have pause before verbal phrases. So if you could notice for this one, non-restrictive clause, you pause before and after non-restrictive clause. And then also for this one, for parenthetical expressions, you pause before and after the parenthetical expressions. Now for verbal phrases, you just pause before the verbal phrase. Okay? So you have here, we have examples. The dogs appeared all satisfied. So the verb here, we have two verbs actually. So for this one, after eating, the dogs appeared all satisfied. So we have two verbs, eating, after eating, and then satisfied. Okay. So, and then we also have having finished the tests, I was allowed to go home. And then we have looking through the window, I saw the children playing at the plaza. And then to memorize a poem, you should read it many times. Okay, next we have the third symbol. We call this double cross juncture. So this is your symbol, double cross. This is it characterizes a drop in pitch. The pausing time responds to a need for a semicolon, colon, or period. So it's very obvious that if you are using, or if you can use double cross juncture if you see a colon or a semicolon or semicolon. So for this one, we have two of them and five examples. Okay, example number one, sentence, a vision without action is a daydream, and action without a vision is a nightmare. So you just have to take note that if you see this, a semicolon or a colon, semicolon or a colon, that's when you give, or you can make a symbol double cross juncture. Okay, we have more examples here, more junctures. So you have about, and then we have about, syntax, and then we have syntax. Midwife, you have midwife. Wet nurse, and then wet nurse. Sweetheart, and then sweetheart. A name, and then a name versus an aim. Under arrest versus under arrest. Real eyes versus realize. Short train versus short rain. Okay, so again, when you talk about juncture, you just have to know, you just have to identify, or you have to know when and where to pause so that the meanings are not changed. The meaning of the word, the meaning of the sentence or the phrase are not changed. Okay, so do you have questions so far? If you have questions, you can just message me or PM me if you have questions about juncture before I move on to intonation, or not before I move on, but after the report, you can send me a message if you have questions about juncture. Now we move on to intonation. So this is the variation of in pitch used to indicate the speaker's attitudes and emotions, to highlight or focus an expression, to signal the elocutionary act performed by a sentence, or to regulate the flow of discourse. This is also a complex system of meaning communicated through the rise and fall of a speaker's voice. English speakers use it to communicate many different types of meaning, grammatical meaning, different types of questions and statements, status of information, main or subordinate, finished or unfinished. Okay, so basically, juncture and intonation go together, or they go together hand in hand in most cases, if I'm not mistaken, because for intonation there's pitch. So if we could go back to juncture, double cross juncture was also is also or using pitch. So again, for intonation, we talk about pitch, the rise and fall of the rise and fall, the rising and falling intonation. Okay, so we have four types of intonation, or we have four patterns of intonation. Number one, we have rising intonation. This means the pitch of the voice rises over time. So again, it rises. So the symbol is an arrow up, an arrow going up. And then we have falling intonation, means that the pitch falls with time. Okay, so the symbol for this one is the arrow down. And then dipping or fall rise intonation, falls and then rises. So you have the symbol, the falling and the rising. That's two arrows. And then peaking or rise fall intonation, rises and then falls. Okay. So next, take note that all vocal languages use pitch pragmatically in intonation. For instance, for emphasis, to convey surprise or irony, or to pose a question. Tonal languages such as Chinese and Hausa use intonation in addition to using pitch for distinguishing words. So if you want to emphasize something, if you want, again, if you want to, when you speak, and then if you want to emphasize something, that's when you use intonation. Okay. So we have list of intonation function. This is proposed by J.C. Wells. So we have number one, attitudinal function. This is for you to express your emotions and your attitudes. Example, a fall from a high pitch on the more syllable of good morning suggests more excitement than a fall from a low pitch. So if you say good morning, if you say that way, then that means you are excited or you are happy. So high pitch on the more high pitch. Good morning. Okay, so again, that's happiness. It shows happiness in your tone. Now, grammatical function, this is to identify grammatical structure. It is claimed that in English, a falling pitch movement is associated with statements, but a rising pitch turns a statement into a yes-no question. As in, he's going home. This use of intonation is more typical of American English than of British. Okay, so you have to take note that if it is a falling pitch, if it is a falling intonation, so that usually is a statement, or yes, a statement. But if you apply a rising pitch, so that's when it becomes a question, or usually it becomes a yes no question. Next slide, we have the third function. We call this focusing. This is to show what information in the utterance is new and what is already known. Okay, so we have examples here in English. I saw a man in the garden. I saw a man in the garden. So this sentence, I saw a man in the garden. So you have the falling intonation here, the falling sign. I saw a man in the garden. So this statement answers the question, whom did you see or what happened? For this one, okay, so the falling intonation happens after ah. Now for this one, the falling intonation happens after before the word saw. So after the word I. Okay, now you say, I saw a man in the garden answers, did you hear a man in the garden? So basically, if just like juncture, if the pitch or the intonation changes, the meaning also changes. Okay. Or yes. So again, for juncture, just like juncture, if there's a movement or if there's a change in places of the intonation or the juncture, again, there's a change in meaning. So we have number four, uh, function. We call this discourse function. This is to show how clauses and sentences go together in spoken discourse. Subordinate clauses often have lower pitch, faster tempo, and narrower pitch range than their main clause, as in the case of the material in parentheses in the red planet. As it's known, is forth from the sun. Okay, so discourse function. And then we have number five, psychological function. So this one is to organize speech into units that are easy to perceive, memorize, and perform. So we have example, the adherence, you can have it in red, blue, green, yellow, or black, is more difficult to understand and remember than the same adherence divided into tone units as in red, blue, green, yellow, or black. Okay, so it says here for psychological function, if the symbol, if the pitch is higher, so it's more understandable than all fall pitch or falling intonation. Okay, so it becomes confusing if the intonation are all in falling intonation, and it becomes more understandable if you use the rising intonation. So that's what you mean by psychological function. Number six, we have indexical function. This is to act as a marker of personal or social identity. So we have example, group membership can be indicated by the use of intonation patterns adopted specifically by that group, such as street vendors or preachers, in the so-called high rising terminal, where a statement ends with a high rising pitch movement and is said to be of younger speakers of English and possibly to be more widely found among young female speakers. Okay, so take note for indexical function. Uh, the speakers of this are usually of uh, younger speakers, and again, it's possibly to be more widely found among young female speakers. Okay, so we have Traeger and Smith, four contrastive levels of pitch. We have four, number one low, then we have middle, and then we have high, and then we have very high. So for normal conversation is usually at middle or high pitch. So for normal conversation, normal. So it's not formal, normal. You could say within the house or within family and friends. So that's example of normal. So this is usually at middle or high pitch. Low pitch occurs at the end of utterances other than yes no questions, which high pitch occurs at the end of yes no questions. And very high pitch is for strong emotion or emphasis. So take note, very high pitch is for strong emotion or emphasis. And then we have declarative sentences. So for declarative sentences, shows a 2-3-1 pitch pattern. If the last syllable is prominent, the final decline in pitch is a glide. For example, this is fun. For example, in the sentence, this is fun, this is at pitch 2 and fun starts at level 3 and glides down to level 1. So 2-3-1. 2-3-1. So this is your 1-2-3-4. So that's what it means. So 231, this is what's this? Middle, high, and low pitch for this is for declarative sentences. So if you are using or if you are speaking declarative sentences, so you use a 231 pitch pattern. Now we move on to yes no questions. With a 2-3 intonation pattern, usually have subject verb inversion, as in subject verb inversion. So meaning there's an inversion of the subject and the verb. So for this one, this is have you got a minute? Have you got a minute? Okay, so we are using number 2 pitch, which is middle. So this is middle, 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 and then for minute, that's already number 3, high, high, high. Okay, so there. You can just read them yourself or just go back to the PowerPoint presentation if you find it very confusing. Or again, you can just message me if you have questions about this. Now we move on to the next level. So we have tag question. For this one, with declarative intent at the end of the declarative statement. So you follow a 3 and then fall intonation and then 1 contour rather than a rising contour, since they are not actually intended as yes no questions. So we have an example here. We should visit him. We should visit him. Shouldn't we? We should visit him. Shouldn't we? Or you could also say, you may apply the rising intonation or the 3, number 3, very high pitch if uh, there is uncertainty. There is uncertainty in your tag question. So you say, we should visit him, shouldn't we? Okay, so you see the difference there. Now for questions, with or can be ambiguous in English writing with regard to whether they are either or questions or yes, no questions. But intonation in speech element eliminates ambiguity. For example, would you like juice or soda? Okay, so there. So we move on to this one. The Toby system. The Toby stands for tones and breaks indices. So this is a more recent approach to the analysis of intonation, grew out of the research of Janet Pierre Humbert and developed into the system most well known by the name Toby. Again, this is a shortcut for tones and breaks indices. And this approach, or the approach, is sometimes referred to as auto-segmental. The most important points of this system are the following. So only two tone associated with pitch accents are recognized. These bring high, H or high, and L for low. All other tonal contours are made up of combinations of H, L, and some other modifying elements. In addition to the two tones mentioned above, the phonological system includes break indices used to mark the boundaries between prosodic elements. Breaks may be of different levels, and then we have tones or linked distressed syllables, An asterisk is used to indicate a tone that must be aligned with the stressed syllable. In addition, there are phrasal accents which signal the pitch at the end of an intermediate phrase, and boundary tones at full phrase boundaries. And then we have a full Toby transcription. Includes not only the above phonological elements but also the acoustic signal on which the transcription is based. Okay, so basically, if you're not very conscious with how you say or how you pronounce the word, you will not notice that you're using juncture or you're using intonation. So basically, we can just or we could just notice intonation or juncture if we want to put emphasis, if you want to put emphasis, or if you want to put more emotion to what you are saying. So that's my report. That's everything about my report. So I hope you understood what I was what I just have discussed. And then again, if you have questions, more questions about the report, you can just message me if you have confusions. So just message me, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day, everyone, and advance Merry Christmas. Thank you.